Hello everyone, I'm Ed Green, and this week I'm going to show you another setting in the Google Assistant settings, and this one is about setting a default podcast service. You can obviously play podcasts on the Google Assistant, either on your phone or on a speaker. And the advantage of setting a default service in particular is that if you want to listen to podcasts on one device and then resume them on another, then it's good to have a service that syncs across devices that you can specify in the Assistant settings. You'll know how to get to Assistant settings by now. You can either do it if you have a Pixel through the app settings, which is why we're covering this topic now. You can get to it from a screen where you've invoked the Assistant through the Google Assistant menu button. And you can also get to it in Settings, Google, and go through the tree that way and drill down. So I have my Google settings open. You'll want to scroll down to all settings for this one or use the search facility at the top, and you are looking for
podcasts, services used to play podcasts.
So I'm going to double tap on this.
Assistant settings. Podcast. Web view out of list.
Now this will change depending on what you have installed on your phone, and I don't have much installed by way of podcast players, but let's have a look.
Navigate up. Button. More options. Button. Podcasts. Heading 1. You can ask your assistant to play podcasts from any of your services. Your podcast services. Heading 2. Choose which service to use by default. 3 items. Your podcast services. List box. Enlist. Item 1 of 3. Google Podcasts. Free access to 1M plus podcasts. Free access to 1M plus podcasts. Not ticked. Google Podcasts. Radio button.
So we could have Google Podcasts do this. I have that app on my phone that will sync. Carrying on down, I have
Enlist. Item 2 of 3. Spotify Premium subscription active unlinked. Spotify Premium subscription active. Not ticked. Spotify. Radio button.
You'll recall we linked Spotify if you listen to my demo on setting a music service. Spotify is linked here.
Unlinked. Button. Enlist. Item 3 of 3. No default provider. Ticked. No default provider. Radio button.
And no default provider is what we have ticked. I don't tend to listen to podcasts across devices. I just use my phone. And because I only use a player for that rather than a service, it doesn't show up here. I use Podcast Addict. It works a little bit differently in that way, in that I think in the music section it lets you specify or access at least a music app on your phone that's not a subscription service. But with podcasts, it does have to be a service. So if you were to install something like a Pocket Casts, I assume that would show up here. And it really is as simple as that. You would double tap one of those radio buttons to set a default provider, and then whenever you asked your Google Assistant to play a podcast on any of your devices, it would use that provider.